Tesvav,
Yeah, I guess so. Oh, where's my thing?
okay,
Yeah.
Tesvav. If the daughter of a Kohen married an Israel, she may not eat truma. If he died and she has a child by him, she may not eat truma. If she then married a Levi, she may eat the tithe. If he died and she has a child by him, she may eat the tithe. Then, if she then married him, she may eat the tithe. If she then married a Kohen, she may eat truma. If he died and has a child by him, she may eat truma. If a child by the Kohen died, she may not eat truma. If a child by the Levi died, she may not eat the tithe. If a child by the Israel died, she returns to her father's house. Concerning this, it was said, she returns to her father's house as in her youth, and she may eat from her father's bread. A woman whose husband went overseas and they came and told her, your husband died, and she married, and afterward her husband came back, she must leave both of them. And she needs to receive a bill of divorce from each. And she receives neither the ketubah payment for the fruits, nor sustenance, or worn property payments from either. If she took payment from either, she must return it. A child by either is a mamzer, and neither of them may contaminate himself to her, and neither has rights to be found to her found objects, or the products of her labor, or the nullification of her vows. If she was the daughter of a Yisrael, she is disqualified from marrying into the priesthood. If the daughter of a Levi, she is disqualified from eating the tithe. If the daughter of a Kohen, she is disqualified from eating truma. The heirs of both men do not inherit a ketubah. If they should die, the brother of each performs chalitza, but not yibum. Rav Yossi says the ketubah claim is on the first husband's property. Rav Elazar says the first one has the rights to her found objects, the products of her labor, and the nullification of her vows. Reb Shimon says cohabitation of chalitza with the first brother releases her co-wife and her child by him is not a mamzer. If she married without sanction of the court, she may return to him. If she married by the court's sanction, she must leave, but is exempt from the sacrifice. But if she did not marry by the court's sanction, she must leave and is obligated to bring the sacrifice. The power of the court is effective in exempting her from the sacrifice. And if the court ruled that she may marry and she went and acted immorally, she is obligated to bring the sacrifice since they only permitted her to marry.
All right. And they only permitted her to marry kosher was the unwritten word over there. But anyway, um, the Mishnah Gimel, Ha'isha shehalach bala ubana medinas hayam. So a woman has got a husband and only one son. And the husband and the son went overseas. Uba'u va'amrula, and witnesses came and told her, Meis ba'alech va'achakach meis banech. So first of all, your husband died, and they were in an accident, and the husband died first, and then the next day the son died. Okay, now what does that mean? The order of death is significant because when her husband died, he had a son, and therefore there's no chiyuv of yibum. So you're a widow, you're free to remarry. Okay, and then the son died afterwards. Okay, so then she goes and she remarries. V'niseis v'achakach amrula, and then came some other witnesses who obviously these other witnesses must have been stronger witnesses than the previous ones. Like let's say the first one was just a single witness, and then came two witnesses who came and said, "No, no, no, you got the story all wrong. The son died, and then the father died. Now, if the son died first, and then when the father died, he didn't have any children, and therefore she has a chiyuv of yibum. Meanwhile, she's gone and remarried somebody unrelated." Okay, which is a problem. Okay, Tetse, now she is forced to divorce. V'havlad rishon v'achron mamzer, and this is according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's the minority opinion. He holds that. Remember, we said when we were talking about a mamzer, Rabbi Akiva was very machmir. He said anything where there's a love in the Torah that says that you're not allowed to have relations with this woman, the child is a mamzer. Okay, so Yevamos Shuk is a stam lab. It's not an erva. This mission is being taught according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. It says that if she goes and has a child with another man without having done chalitza first, um, then the child is a mamzer. Halacha, it's not. Okay, but anyway, it says the Vlad Rishon va'achron mamzer from whether she had the child before she was notified about the change in the status or afterwards. It makes no difference because the facts are the facts. Amrula, what happens if it was the other way around? Meis benech v'achakach meis balech. So your son died and then your husband died. So one witness came and said your son died and then your husband died. And now she says, okay, well, I guess I got to do Yibum then. And her husband's brother takes her as a wife. Then come two witnesses and say, "Chiluf hayu dvarim." No, it's the other way around. The father died first and then the son. Now she's living with her husband's brother, Shelo b'makom mitzvah, and that everyone would agree. Tate say she has to be divorced. V'havlad rishon v'achron mamzer, and then this really is a mamzer case because it's her husband's brother. That's an Isser Ereva, and everyone would agree that the child would be a mamzer. Amrula, what's the case? Ames balech. If they said to her, your husband died, v'nises, and then she went and she got married. V'achar kach amrula kayam haya v'meis. So two witnesses came and said no. The first person that came and said, yeah, your husband died in a car crash overseas. So so she says, okay, well, she's going to remarry. Meanwhile, 6 months later, two more witnesses come and say, your husband died last week after he was in a coma since the car crash and now he's just died. So there was a misunderstanding. She thought he was dead and really he was in a coma, but now he really is dead. Okay, problem. She's been living with this other guy for
Right.
for 6 months before her husband was actually dead. Okay, Tetsei, she has to get a divorce. But Vlada Rishon Mamzer, any child that she conceived from this man while her husband was still alive is a mamzer. Va'achron eno mamzer. But if she conceived after her husband actually died, this child is not a mamzer because really it was just the issue of marrying the person that she was having an affair with Ki'ilu that's an issue drabanan and it doesn't create a mamzer. Okay. Another case, Amrula, Meis Balech Veniskadsha. If they said to her, your husband died, and she went and she did Kiddushin with another man, but they haven't lived together yet. V'achar kach ba bala. And now her husband comes out of the blue and says, "Hey, I'm back. Who's this other guy? What's this ring?" Well, she hasn't been living with another guy. Muteresh lachzor because she hasn't lived with the other guy, she is allowed simply to return to her husband, and there was no kedushin. The kedushin was not effective, and she doesn't need to get from the other guy either. Okay. Why now in the previous cases when we said that she'd actually been living with him, we said she needs a get from both of them. But that's only because she's been living with the second guy and everyone sees that she's been with this other guy and therefore she would need a get. But since she hasn't been living with this second guy, it's clear to all that she was not married to him and there's no need for a get. Afal pishenasan acharon get, and even if the second guy decided, let me give her a get, lo psala min hakuna, she hasn't lost the right to marry a Kohen. Most practical case of this would be if her husband himself is a Kohen. She's allowed to return to him, even if he gave her a get. Says, no, this is not, it's an invalid get. It's nothing happened over here. She just returns to her husband straight. Okay. Es zo darash Rabbi Elazar ben Masya. So this is the pasuk says Rabbi Elazar ben Masya. Isha grusha me isha. Why does the pasuk have to say me isha? Why not just say isha grusha, where that a Kohen's not allowed to marry? When it says you're not allowed to marry a divorcee, why does it have to be divorced from her husband? The extra word me isha is lo me ish she'eno isha. In other words, that it only the get is only puzzles her from the Kohenah if she was actually divorced from her husband, not from some random guy who gave her a get. Okay. Mi shehalcha ishto limdinas hayam. Now, let's take a reverse case. A woman goes overseas. Okay, ubava amrulo, and a witness comes and tells her husband, Mesa ishtacha. I'm sorry, your wife died while she was overseas. He says, okay, well, I'll be comforted by marrying her sister. Right? That's allowed when once his wife has died, he's allowed to marry her sister. Nasis achosa, va'achar kach bas ishto, and then his wife comes home and says, hey, what's going on over here? Okay, muteres lachzor he is allowed to return to her. This is not symmetrical, right? When it's the case of a husband returning from overseas, that has ruined the marriage. But if the husband was simply living with the wife's sister, Remember, a husband is allowed to have multiple wives. So all that happened is that he was living with her sister in sin, and the sister must now leave the household, and the original wife comes back. Hu mutar bikrovas shnia, and furthermore, since the marriage with the sister was never effected, it was from the outset it was an invalid marriage. He hasn't been disqualified from her relatives, from her relatives that obviously not are not his wife's relatives. So, for example, her daughter, let's say, he would if his he would still be allowed to marry his wife's sister's daughter. That's a legitimate. Ushnia Moteris Bekrovav, and also the second woman is allowed to marry his relatives. So, for example, if his brother comes and says, "Well, okay, um, you can't be married to her, but I'd like to be married to her," so that's fine. So the brother can go and marry the sister now, and she's not considered like the wife of his brother. Okay, Im Mesa Rishona, if the first wife did die, Mutar B'shnia, then he's allowed to go back to her and remarry her. Amrulo, okay, new case. They say to the husband, Meisa ishtecha v'nasa is achosa. Okay, so he married his sister. V'achar kach amru lo, kayemes haisa v'meisa. No, no, all this time, the last 6 months, she's been in a coma, and only now she died. Havlad rishon mamzer v'achron eno mamzer. So obviously, while he was married to his wife's sister, and his wife was still alive, any child that was conceived then is a mamzer. But after the wife died, the child is kosher. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Yossi now has this is quite a crazy one, and I had to read the article explanation of this quite a few times to chap it. Kol sheposel al yidei acherim posel al yidei atzmo, v'chol she'eno posel al yidei acherim eno posel al yidei atzmo. Okay, one that who puzzles um, the others. So he says this asymmetry doesn't work between the husband and wife. And I'm actually going to open up the article explanation here just a sec to get this one completely right. Okay. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Previous. Okay. Okay, so Rabbi Yossi explains any case in which the man's second marriage caused his second wife to become disqualified to others. That is, if his marriage to his wife's sister caused her to become forbidden to return to her original husband, then he disqualifies himself as well, and he may not return to his original wife. Um, okay, but in any case where he doesn't cause his second wife to become disqualified to others, that is where his second wife may return to her original husband, Eino posel al yidei, then he doesn't disqualify himself. So now the footnote of I don't know if you've got exactly the same edition as me over here, but I think it's important to read this footnote over here because it explains it very nicely. According to Rabbi Yossi, a man whose wife went overseas is not always permitted to return to her after marrying her sister. Okay, that's his big chiddush. Up until now, the Tanna Kamma has been saying that the man gets carte blanche, and if he messed up, oops, then he still goes back to his wife. Okay, Rabbi Yossi's ruling is based on a completely different understanding of the laws taught in Mishnah 1. We learned that if a woman remarried because she mistakenly thought her husband had died, she's forbidden to return to her first husband. And we said this is a penalty because she didn't verify that her husband was truly dead before remarrying. Okay, that was the reason for the penalty. But Rabbi Yossi disagrees. He says the reason such a woman may not return to her first husband is because she received a get from her second husband. And as we learned in Mishnah Aleph, she needs a get from her second husband, even though she wasn't ever legally married to him, because people might think they were truly married. And if she didn't receive a get, people might think that the woman can leave her husband without a get. So according to Rabbi Yossi, it's because she receives a get from her second husband that she may not return to her first husband. Because if she did return to her first husband after receiving a get from the second man, it looks like her first husband is remarrying his wife after she'd been married and divorced from a second husband, which is asur. Because once a divorced woman remarries, she cannot ever return to her first husband. So according to Rabbi Yossi, it's to avoid such an appearance that she may not return to her first husband. So since the reason that she may not return to her first husband is because she received a get from the second husband, it follows that in a case where she doesn't need a get from the second husband, she may return to her first husband. Okay, and that squares with what we just learned in the previous in that Mishnah about if if she only did Erisin, she never lived with the second guy, then she doesn't need a get from him. And therefore
Right.
she's allowed to, so according to Rabbi Yossi, that's the reason why she's allowed to return to her first husband, is because she didn't need a get. Okay. So it follows, so according to Rabbi Yossi, our Mishnah is such a case. When the first sister returns from overseas, everyone realizes that her husband's marriage to the second sister was a mistake, and they were never truly married. Consequently, there's no need for him to give her a get. And since the second sister doesn't receive a get from him, she can return to her first husband. Like, let's say she had been divorced before, and now this other guy, her sister's husband, decided to marry her, and now the sister came back, and now she leaves it all in a huff, and now she wants to go back to her first husband. She's allowed to. And that's exactly what Rabbi Yossi is saying over here. Since he hasn't disqualified himself from her sister, he also hasn't disqualified her from her first husband. So she's allowed to go back and remarry her first husband if she wants to. Okay, and this is the case that Rabbi Yossi is saying, where he doesn't cause his second wife to become disqualified to others, he doesn't disqualify himself from returning to his original wife. However, this is only true if the husband of the first sister had been fully married to her with Nisuin. If he had only done Erusin to her before she went overseas, okay, then even when she returns, people won't realize that his later marriage to the second sister was a mistake. Rather, they'll think that his betrothal to the first sister had been based on some condition, and when the condition wasn't met, the betrothal was nullified, and that allowed him to legally marry the second sister. So, although this didn't happen, people might think it happened, and therefore he must give the second sister a get, which then forbids her return to her first husband. It also forbids him from returning to his first wife, the sister who went overseas, because he has given her sister a get, and she therefore now appears to be the sister of the woman he divorced. Okay, and that is the case in which Rabbi Yossi says where he caused his second wife to become disqualified to others, he disqualifies himself from returning to his first wife. Okay, this isn't a concern where he was fully married because only betrothal can be made conditionally. The complete that is kiddushin can be made conditionally, but nisuin is never made conditionally. Okay, so that's actually the first time I've read this Mishnah many times before, and I think I couldn't understand Kahati's explanation before now, and now that I see this art scroll explanation now, this suddenly okay, now I chap what Rabbi Yossi is talking about. Okay, Mishnah Hey Amru Lo. Okay, so they come and say to the husband, Meisa Ishtecha. And he marries her paternal sister, her paternal half sister. Just sorry, my wife just needed a reply, and the answer is no, I don't have them. So okay, so he marries her paternal half sister. Okay, and then they come, and then she goes overseas, and the report comes back that she's died. She says, okay, so what does he do? He marries her maternal half sister. So what's happening is you're having this chain of events where we're going to be five of them. Okay, so the case repeats. We're just repeating this for effect. Obviously, this case never happened, but we're talking in theory, where each wife in succession goes overseas and comes back a report that she's died. So each time he marries her half sister, first from her father's side, then her mother's side, then her father's side, then her mother's side. So we've got so every second woman is completely unrelated to the other one. Okay, they're right there. Okay, so now what happens is they all come back on the same boat and say, "Hey, we're back." So now what happens is the first wife, obviously, he's still married to, right? Because she didn't actually die. Now her sister, through her father, he cannot be married to because it's his wife's sister. So therefore, her kiddushin was always invalid. He was never married to her. And since he was never married to her, the third woman who is permitted to him because that's his wife's half sister's half sister, who's unrelated to his first wife, and therefore he is married to her. And but her half sister he is not married to, and her half sister he is married to. So it skips so each one
First
skips.
third, 50. First third is 50.
Right. Okay, mutar b'rishana b'shlishis of the he's permitted to the first, third, and fifth. Upotros tzarasehan, and furthermore, each one, if he dies childless, each one of them, if it does a chalitza or yibum, the brother does a chalitza or yibum, the others are permitted. Okay, v'aso b'shnia over revius, and he is prohibited to the second and fourth because they are his wife's sisters. Ve'ein bias achas mehen poteres tzarasa, and obviously, if he dies marrying or doing yibum or doing yibum or chalitza to one of those two isn't going to help because they're not his wives. Ve'im ba al hashnia la'achar misas harishona. But what happens if the first woman actually did die? So we're changing the story suddenly, so that in fact his first wife did die, but all the others are still alive. Then everything flips around because now his second wife is actually legitimate because it's his wife's sister after her death. Okay. Muta b'shnia uva revi'is. Now he's permitted to the second and fourth wives, or potras tzarasein, and they are linked together for yibum and chalitza. V'aso b'shlishis uva chamishis, and the third and fifth wife are not his wives at all. And v'ein bias achas mehen poter tzarasa, and obviously then they're not in the parsha for yibum or chalitza. Simple.
Simple, yeah. How do you keep track of that?
But very logical. If you just follow the rules, you can see the logic of it. Okay.
Okay, Vav,
Gimel.
Vav Gimel. A widow who was married to a Kohen Gadol or a divorcee or Kalutza who was married to an ordinary Kohen, even if they were only betrothed, they may not eat Truma. If Elazar and Reb Shimon, however, validated, and if they were widowed or divorced, it was from marriage, they are disqualified, but if from betrothal, they are qualified. A Kohen Gadol may not marry a widow, neither a widow from betrothal nor a widow from marriage, and he may not marry a Bogeris. Reb Elazar and Reb Shimon, however, validate marriage with a Bogeris, and he may not marry the victim of a blow. He betrothed a widow and then was appointed to Kohen Gadol. He may marry her. If it happened that Yeshua ben Gama betrothed Marsha, the daughter of Visos, and the king then appointed him to be Kohen Gadol, and he married her. If a widow awaiting her Yavam fell to an ordinary Kohen, and he was then appointed to be Kohen Gadol, even if he had already performed Mama with her, he may not marry her. If a Kohen Gadol's brother died, he performs Chalitza B'Na'ibah. An ordinary Kohen may not marry as in Lonis unless he has a wife or children. Rabbi Yehuda says even if he has a wife or children, he may not marry an Alonis because she has the Zona mentioned in the Torah. The sages, however, say Zona refers only to a female convert, a freed slave woman, or one who engaged in forbidden cohabitation. Okay. That was simple. Okay. Moed Cotton. We have Aleph Gimel. Elias ben Yaakov says we may divert water from one tree to another, provided that by doing so one does not water the entire field. Seeds that were not watered before the festival may not be watered during Kol Moed, and the sages, however, permit watering in both these cases. We may trap moles and mice in an orchard or in a grain field in the usual manner during Kol Moed and during Shemitah. The sages, however, say in an orchard we may trap in the usual manner, but in a grain field we may not do so only in an unusual manner. We may block up a breach during Kol Moed, but during Shemitah we may build it up in the usual manner. Rameya says we may examine the Gayam for the first time in order to render a lenient verdict, but not to render a stringent one. The comments say we may not examine a negative whether for a lenient or a stringent verdict. The mayor says a person may gather his father's and mother's bones for burial as it is a source of joy for him. The Bilti says it is a source of mourning for him, and a person may not inspire lamentations for his dead relative, but utilize him during the 30 days preceding a festival. Okay.
Got him.
Okay. Scullum. Okay. Vav Vehe. Originally, they would stay collateral for the finder until they were in the succum, but when they began abandoning it and fleeing, Beis Din instituted that the succum should come from the public treasury. Said Reb Shimon, Basin instituted 7 ordinances, and this is one of them. The others are: if a Gentile sent his burnt offering from a faraway country and sent the succum with it, they are offered from his own. If not, they are offered from the public treasury. Similarly, a proselyte who died and left offerings, if he had the succum, they are offered from his own, but if not, they're offered from the public treasury. It is a stipulation of Bezdin regarding a Kohen Gadol who died that his flour offering be brought from the public treasury. Rabbi Yehuda says it was purchased with his heirs' money, and in this case, it was offered whole. Regarding the salt and wood, based in instituted, the Kohen may make use of them. Regarding the red cow, they instituted that its ashes be exempt from the laws of Milah. And regarding placements for the disqualified bird offerings, they should come from the public treasury. Yossi says the one who supplies the birds must supply placements for the disqualified ones. Okay.
One
Let's
more.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, or also Perik Ches Aleph.
Okay. Ches Aleph. All spittle that is found in Yerushalayim is assumed to be tahor, except for that found in the upper market. These are the words of the mayor. Rabbi Yoshi says that other times of the year, whatever spittle is in the middle of the street is assumed to be tamei, and whatever is on the side is tahor. But at the time of the pilgrimage festival, whatever spittle is in the middle of the street is assumed to be tahor, and whatever is at the sides is tamei, because they are a minority. They withdraw to the sides.
Okay.
Okay. And we are on to go.
Yes.
Okay, right over here. Shavias. Okay, Zion base. They laid down another general principle. Whatever is not human food or cattle food or a species of dying matter and keeps in the ground, the seventh year applies to it and its proceeds. Beer does not apply to it or to its proceeds. When which are they? The roots of the wild loaf and the roots of the mint, the hart's tongue, the roots of the milkweed, and the hazelwood. Of the species of dying matter, the matter is the sow bread and the sow bread. The seventh applies to them and their proceeds. Beer does not apply to them or to their proceeds. Or the mayor says beer applies to the proceeds until the new year. They said to him, beer does not apply to them, much less to the proceeds. They lay down an important principle regarding the seventh year. Whatever is human food or cattle food or a species of dying matter, which is not keeping the ground, the seventh year applies to it and its proceeds. The beer applies to it and its proceeds, which are they? The leaves of the wild loaf, the blends of mint, chicory, leeks, portulac, and milkweed. In cattle food, thorns and thistles, any other species of dying matter after growth in woad and matter, the seventh year applies to them and their proceeds, and beers apply to them and their proceeds. Okay. Oh, wait, I made a mistake. I went the wrong way, Joel.
Yeah.
I went the way. All right. Okay. Went the wrong way. Okay. Zion base. They lay down another general principle. Whatever is not human food or cattle or a species or
You already read this, but
I read that. So
yeah.
let's go. Hucks and blossoms of the pomegranate, shells of nuts, and the kernels of the seventh year applies to them and their proceeds. The dyer may die for himself, but may not die for payment, because one may not trade with seventh year produce or with firstborn or with trumos. They will carry on or with trefo or with reptiles or with creeping things. And one may not buy field vegetables and sell them in the market, but one may gather them, and his son sells for them for him, and he took for himself, and what some was left over, he may sell them. Okay, that's it.
One
One
more.
more. If one bought a firstborn for his son's feast or for a pilgrim festival and he does not need it, he may sell it. Hunters of wild animals, birds, and fish who chance upon unclean species may sell them. Rabbi Yehuda says also, if anyone chance upon it, he may take it and sell it, provided that this is not his trade and the sages forbid.
Okay. Kalim.
Okay, I get this over here. Hang on. We have cup of ches. Regarding hides of a household, the thought renders them tummy, but regarding hides of a tanner, thought does not render them tummy. Regarding hides of a thief, thought renders them tummy, but regarding hides of a robber, thought does not render them tummy. Reb Shimon says the opposite. Regarding hides of a robber, thought renders them tummy, but regarding hides of a thief, thought does not render them tummy, since the owners have not despaired. Regarding a hide that is tummy midrash and one decided to use it for straps or for sandals, as soon as he applies a knife to it, it is tahor. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda, but the comments say until he reduces it to less than 5 handbreadths. But Elazar, the son of Zadok, says even if one of you makes a napkin from a hide, it remains tummy, but from a mattress, it is tahor. Cloth can contract tumor in 5 categories. Sack can contract tumor in 4 categories. Hide can contract tumor in 3 categories. Wood can contract tumor in 2 categories. And earthenware can contract tumor in 1 category. Earthenware is susceptible to tumor as a receptacle. Any earthenware essential that has no interior has no exterior. Wood exceeds earthenware that wood is subject to tumor as a seat. Similarly, regarding a tray that has no trim, if it is a wooden utensil, it is susceptible to tumor, but if it is an earthenware utensil, it is tahor. Hide exceeds wood in that hide is subject to roof tumor. Sack exceeds hide, and the sack is subject to tumor as a woven article. Cloth exceeds sack that cloth is subject to tumor when it measures 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths.
Okay,
Cloth,
that's
that's
it.
it.
Done. And Shavuos.
Hey, Dalit, hey. I adore you that you come and testify for me that I have it in so-and-so's possession, a deposit, a loan, stolen article, and lost article. And they reply, we swear that we do not know any testimony for you. They are liable only once, but if they reply, we swear that we don't know that you have in so-and-so's possession a deposit, a loan, stolen article, and a lost article. Um, uh, Article, they are liable for each one. I adjure you that you come and testify me that I have in so-and-so's possession a deposit of wheat, barley, and spelt. And they reply, we swear that we do not know any testimony for you. They are liable only once. But if they reply, we swear that we do not know any testimony for you, and that you have in so-and-so's possession wheat, barley, and spelt, they are liable for each one. I adjure you that you come and testify to me that I have in so-and-so's possession damages or half damages, double payments or fourfold or 5 payments, or that so-and-so violated my daughter, seduced my daughter, or that my son struck me, or that my neighbor wounded me, or he's ignited my sack of grain on Yom Kippur, they are liable. Okay.
One more.
I adjure you that you come and testify for me that I am a Kohen, that I am a Levi, that I am not the son of a divorcee, that I'm not the son of a Kalutza, and so is a Kohen, that so is a Levi, and he is not the son of a divorcee, and he is not the son of a Kalutza. But so and so violated his daughter, or seduced his daughter, that my son wounded me, that my neighbor wounded me, or that he ignited my stack of grain on the Sabbath. These are all exempt.
Right, because there's no monetary damage. It's things that are entitlements, but not monetary damage. Okay.
Okay, enjoy your fruit.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank
lovely Tu B'Shvat.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.